what the last evening will be like. You're sitting at the small bay window in an empty cafe by the sea. It's nightfall and the owner is looking up. Though you're still hunched over the radiator, which is slowly losing warmth. Now you're walking down to the shore to watch the last blues fading on the waves. You've lived in small houses, tight spaces. The walls around you kept closing in. But the sea and the sky were also yours. No one else is around to drink with you. From the watery fog, shadowy depths, you're alone with the whirling cosmos. Goodbye, love, far away, in a warm place. Night is endless here, silence infinite.
Now we are moving into the summary. Here's the author of this poem has written this poetry in a very simple and elegant way. It has a deep meaning if one tries to understand. In the beginning, we will find how a person's life is. They're with everyone, but still they're alone. The poet has described the same thing over here. Even though it's the last evening in our life, this is about what someone expects and what he feels in his life. And this poem can be felt by everyone who will read it deeply. As I mentioned before, that this poem is about someone expect and it is about what he feels in his life. And in this case, the author feels that he have lost his happiness, thus he wants to be happy. We can see it from the word, from the stanza that stated he is sitting on the window in an empty cave nearby the sea, and the owner wants to close it as it's nightfall. He is walking down to the shore, where he can watch his last blues fading in these waves. He has lived on the small house, but when he is seeing the sea and the sky were totally ours. He is not feeling the loneliness, although no one is there with him even to have a drink. He is happy to spend his last time in such a nice place. He knows that even no one is there with him, but the sea and the sky were always going to be there with him. Seeing the sea is totally calm, and even he has no regret in his life, being alone in the last evening. Hirsch has amazingly written this poem, and he gave such a lovely message to everyone who read this poem. And I know we came up with different feelings by the more times we read this poem. But I would like to say that in the last poem, it will touch your heart by reading the word goodbye, love, far away, in a warm place. Night is endless here, silence infinite.
First, let's talk about the figurative language in this poetry. Well, we found some kind of figurative language in this poetry. The first one is personification, which is it gives human qualities to the non-living things or ideas. Well, this kind of figurative language occurs in the line number 9 in the sentence or in the words, the walls around you kept closing it. As we know that wall cannot move itself, and we consider this line have a connotative meaning, which is it means when someone is trapped or running out of time. The second one is hyperbole, which is an exaggeration for emphasis or effect. This kind of figurative language occurs in the lines number 10 and 15. In the sentences, but the sea and the sky were also yours. Night is endless here, silence infinite. And the last figurative language is synecdoche, which is a part is represented by the whole, or conversely, the whole is represented by the part. This kind of figurative language occurs in the lines number 7. In the phrase, the last blues, we consider this phrase has connotative meaning. It means sky. Now let's move to the next analysis, which is assonance. Assonance is defined as the repetition of vowel sounds in lines. The first one is in the line number 3. The vowel sound E is repeated 3 times in the words it's, is, and locking. The next one is in the line number 5. The vowel sound E is repeated 3 times as well in the word which, is, and losing. The next one is in the line number 6. The vowel sound O is repeated 3 times in the words your, walking, and shaw. In the line number 8, the vowel sound E is repeated 4 times in the words lived, in, houses, and spaces. The next one is in the line number 11. The vowel sound E as well is repeated 3 times in the words is, drink, and with. And the last one is in the line number 15. The vowel sound is repeated 3 times in the words endless, silence, and infinite. Now we talk about the consonants here in this poetry. Well, consonants is defined as the repetition of consonant sound in the lines. The first consonant here in this poetry is in the line number 5. The consonant W is repeated twice in the words which and warmth. The next one is in the line number 7. The sound W as well is repeated 2 times in the words watch and waves. And the next one in the line number 11. The consonant sound W as well is repeated twice in the words one and with. The next one is in the line number 12. The sound F is repeated twice as well in the word from and fuck. And the last one is in the line number 13. The sound W as well again is repeated twice in the words with and whirling.
This poetry consists of 15 lines. It has 3 chinquin, which contains 5 lines in each stanza. The rhyme structure of this poetry is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, G, N. For the first stanza, it is A, B, C, D, E. For the second stanza, it is F, G, H, I, J. And for the last stanza, it is K, L, M, G, N. After analyzing the rhyme structure, We could say that this poetry is a free verse poetry since there is no recognizable rhyming patterns or rules within it. What is a line break? It is where the author chooses to end one line and start another. This is done on purpose. In free verse poetry, the poet doesn't have to comply to any rules. The poet can break a line for any number of reasons. The first stanza consists of 2 sentences, but the author broke and spread them into 5 lines. This stanza has both enjambment, which is no punctuation mark at its line break, which is shown at the first line, and end stop line, which is with punctuation mark at its line break. The fourth line and the third line is supposed to be in one sentence, according to the grammatical sentence. Hence, they got separated in order to create a meaning, which is then explained by the fifth one. The second stanza consists of 2 sentences and spread into 5 lines as well. In the fourth line, the author might intentionally breaking it to build poetic feelings, which result the opposite situation. In the line, "The walls around you kept closing in, but the sea and the sky were also yours." Unlike the previous stanzas, this stanza has 4 sentences. The first line and the second line are separated, even though they are 1 sentences according to the grammatical sentence. They got separated in order to signal a pause to the reader. For the next 4 lines, the author breaking them at the end of each sentence, which then marked by dots. That indicates that those sentences are complete. Diction refers to the words and vocabulary choices made by a writer to convey an idea or point of view or tell a story in an effective way. In this poetry, barely any complicated words were used, straightforward enough to make one miss the hidden meaning behind the simple words. Tone leads the readers to infer the author's inference to create an atmosphere or mood of the story. This poetry is melancholy towards the end. Melancholy can be interpreted when you are overcome a sorrow or wrap up a sorrowful thoughts. It is the gloomiest of spirits. The lines that represent it are, "No one else is around to drink with you. From the watery fog, shadowy depths, you're alone with the whirling cosmos. Goodbye, love, far away in a warm place." If we compare to another kind of tone, for the example, the poem with the title "The Christmas Party" by Charlotte Wakeman. Rosy cheeks and sweetie palms, too much running, and fun to be had. Scoop up high in safe arms, love the feeling being carried by that. In this instant, the poem has joyful tone, as we can hear at the diction they use. Rosy cheeks, fun, love being carried by that. Really different with the kind of tone we analyze. This sums up the effect of tone in general. The poetry that we analyze is melancholy. It well expresses the feeling of barely willing to savor what you have left, and yet ready to let it all go when the time comes.
So basically there are 2 points that would be presented here. First, the author's biography, and then second, the historical events that lie behind the poems. So now first I'm talking about the author's biography, Edward Hirsch. He was born in Chicago 1950. Edward has made an elegiac and tender poem about his childhood, his family, and his Jewish heritage. He also has made poems that with historical consciousness, including the devastating of European plug of the 14th century and then torture in the 20th century. However, at first Edward made his poem in a romantic way, but in his last decade his poem kind of sorrow with the event of death. And talking about his achievement, he is the author of 8 books of poetry, including Wild Gratitude, which received the National Books Critics Circle Awards, and his most recently The Living Fire, New and Selected Volume, which is a collection of his 35 years of work since 1975 to 2010. So we move on to the historical events that lie behind the poem, what the last evening will be like. So the poem was published in 2010 in the book of The Living Fire, New and Selected Volume. The poem was inspired by the pandemic that happened in 2009, which brought a lot of sorrow for many people at that time. It was first started in the spring of 2009 when a novel influenza, or as called as PDM09 or H1N1, emerged. It was first detected in the US, then spread quickly across America, then around the world. There were more than 60 million cases, which is estimated 100,000 to 500,000 people died during the first years of the pandemic, and many of them died because of respiratory complications. And because many people were infected and many of them have had problem with the respiratory complication, so it affected to the healthcare or medical workers. They're exhausted from long ICU shifts. They're tired of keeping their distance from their family, co-workers, and their beloved ones. They drained by the misery of seeing patients deteriorating, some inclined and alone in the ICU bed. Perhaps they're imagining their own last night, and it's all the truth that they had to stare it into the void in solitude.
The poem revolves around the theme of the melancholy of a loss of any passion in life and eventually giving oneself away to a lonely death. This bittersweet theme is reflected throughout the stanza, from the depiction of one's fervor in life dissipating, the subtle imagery of a life in physical decline, and lastly, the last farewell to living and accepting death. There are 3 meanings that are contained within the poem. First is the loss of passion. This can be inferred from the line, owner locking up and closing the cafe. This line may parallel with the feeling that our role, or our shift, in our lives are complete, and therefore there's no further reason to keep going, or to stay open. There is also the line, now you're walking down to the shore to watch the last blues fading on the waves. Since color can mean happiness, feelings, or cheer, the last fading blues could also mean the loss of passion in living. The second meaning is detachment. There is the line, you lived in small houses, tight spaces. The walls around you kept closing in. This line may not literally refer to any room or living space at all. Instead, it could represent a period in someone's life where they detach themselves from the outside world and further retreat into themselves, stubborn in staying inside their little bubble and refusing to allow the smallest space for anyone or anything else to enter inside their hearts, even though they do have the option to do so. Hence the last line, but the sea and the sky were also yours. With the sea and sky as a metaphorical reference to everything that can let them see the beauty of the world again. The last meaning is embracing death. Without too much explanation, the third stanza heavily involves death, which can be inferred from the lines, from the watery fog, shadowy depths, you along with the whirling cosmos, and night is endless here, silence infinite, which all in order depict the darkness, loneliness, and the infinite time of the afterlife. It's a devastating ending, but at least in this poem there is no pain or regret. For in it we have already made closure with separating from all the things and people we loved and treasured, as can be understood from the line, goodbye, love, far away, in a warm place. And so, the overall meaning is that the poem expresses the feeling of someone who can no longer see what value there is to living. The things that can make them happy doesn't make them happy anymore. With this, there might also be implications of depression, since many experiencing it feels nothing but emptiness or plagued by the feeling that nothing matters in life anymore. The message intended by the author from this poem can be hard to spot. If anything, there may not be any particular uplifting message at all, and reads more like a last dying note before an eternal goodbye, or simply a vent poem. However, if given the liberty to interpret for ourselves, the poem may be indirectly trying to send the reader a message to not take their youth for granted, and find the right, meaningful passions and people to prevent themselves from falling into a future where they only feel the loss and sadness.
This poem has the value of life, referring to the way of living the life that is supposed to be lived by, trying to find and do positive things that become the spirit of our life, even though we experience some difficulties in our life, or perhaps we lost our life passion for what we have experienced before. This poem is related to insight of mental illnesses such as depression, which most people ever experience it, maybe lost their passion, their life passion, and also, this depression can be happen because of the age factor, or it could be due to the surrounding circumstances. Let us say the pandemic, for instance, which makes most people feel lost. Maybe they lost their job or they lost their family. I think it has a relation to nowadays era, especially in this pandemic era.